Night of the ZomBEEs. Written by Kevin David Anderson. Narrated by Rish Outfield. To Avalon and Ronan, be brave, laugh often, and run fast. I think people that love the genre giggle at it. I don't get grossed out. I giggle. George A. Romero. Never say no to adventures. Always say yes. Otherwise, you'll lead a very dull life. Ian Fleming. Chapter 1. Never dream of dying. They were coming for him again. Thousands of them. Diving from the sky like mini fighter planes, their syringe-length stingers targeted his young frame. Shaun knew thrashing would only make it worse, but he couldn't stop himself. With his heart pounding, he slapped at the attacking bees, crushing each tiny creature moments after delivering its piercing sting. Every needle-like puncture sent a bolt of pain up his spine. He wanted to run, but the insects covered his face, and he had to close his eyes. The swarm's weight pulled him down, and his knees buckled. Shaun dropped, then started to roll, hoping to crush them on the ground. But for every one he smashed, 100 more seemed to drop from the sky. The pinpricks of pain spread like fire, and Shaun couldn't tell which part of his body had been stung and which hadn't. He screamed, but all he could hear was buzzing. Then a distant voice cut through the hail of swarming insects. "Shaun!" "Someone's coming for me," Shaun thought. He couldn't see who, but the shouting of his name was getting louder. "Shaun! Shaun!" the voice yelled. "Wake up!" Shaun's eyes popped open. He sat up so fast he tumbled from the stack of empty milk crates he'd dozed off on. "I don't pay you to take naps!" roared Shaun's boss, Mr. Hooper. Shaun scrambled to his feet, running his hands over his body, half expecting to find bees crawling underneath his clothes. Just another dream. Will they ever end? "Now, if you're not too busy, I have an order ready." Mr. Hooper's voice had gone from loud to sarcastic. "I'd be delighted if my delivery boy could stay awake long enough to do his job." After a few blinks, the painful images of the dream were gone, and Shaun now focused on the enormous man. "Yes, sir, I'm ready," Shaun said, standing up as straight as possible. The grocery store manager put his hands on his wide hips and glared at Shaun. Mr. Hooper was a volcano-shaped man with a fiery lava flow of hair and burning hot eyes. Shaun hated those eyes. He could feel their heat constantly boring into him. Mr. Hooper pointed at Shaun's bike, the weight of the groceries in the baskets causing it to lean precariously. "You're all loaded. Now get that delivery out to Dr. Romero ASAP, then hightail it back here for more." Shaun wasn't sure what he was least excited about the most, having to deliver what looked like 8 very heavy bags of groceries, or having to peddle them all the way out to Dr. Romero's house. The doc was a good guy, friendly, but his monstrous house doubled as the doctor's laboratory. Every time Shaun went out there, the doctor invited him in for a peek at one of his experiments, all of which involved bees. Shaun had little interest in science, and had seen enough bees to last several lifetimes. But he always pretended to enjoy the tour, smiled politely, and hoped for a good tip. "Is there a problem?" Mr. Hooper said. "Nothing," Shaun said, reaching into his pocket for his inhaler. He took a squirt of his asthma medicine. Mr. Hooper gave Shaun a look he usually reserved for produce that had gone bad. "If this job is too much for you—" No, Shaun said. "I live to deliver groceries. It's my destiny." "Don't get snarky with me, Shaun. I only gave you this job as a favor to your father." "I know," Shaun said. "You mentioned that yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that, and every day since I started." "I should never have hired a 13-year-old. Why aren't you wearing any black and yellow? You know what day this is." Shaun was dressed as he was most days, in cut-off jeans, TARDIS blue Converse high tops, and an oversized polo shirt a few shades darker than his sand-colored hair. "My mom made me a bee costume for the Founders Day festival, but it's kind of hard to wear on my bike." This wasn't true. Shaun's mom hadn't made him a bee costume since he was 8. She knew he'd never wear it. "No employee of mine is going to be disrespectful and not show town spirit. Here in Honeywell Springs, we dress up for Founders Day." He gestured to his own outfit, a bedazzled black and yellow striped apron worn over a yellow button-down shirt and a black tie. A pair of novelty bee antennas sprouted from his red hair. He looked ridiculous. "I know, Mr. Hooper." "If you aren't going to put on a bee costume, then at least wear some black and yellow." Shaun was bored with this conversation, and he could pretend only so long to take seriously a man wearing metal springs with black fuzzballs sprouting from his head. Shaun snapped off a salute. "Yes, sir. I'll get right on it, sir. I live to serve, sir." "Don't get smart." "Yes, sir. Remaining dumb, sir." "Just get back here by 4 with a signed credit card receipt, or I'll—" "Dock my salary," Shaun finished. "You mentioned that yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that." Mr. Hooper pointed his finger, his traditional wind-up gesture for a very long lecture about either responsibility, respecting elders, working hard, or Shaun's all-time least favorite, being a part of a community. "Okay, I gotta go now." Shaun hurried to his bike, talking over his shoulder. "Got groceries to deliver, receipts to get signed, black and yellow clothes to find. Busy, busy." Shaun jumped on his bike and pushed off without looking back. He didn't need to experience the heat from Mr. Hooper's disapproving gaze. Is any video game worth this? Shaun had only taken this job so he could buy the next generation gaming console and the new incarnation of Chopping Mall, the video game he and his best friend Toby loved more than anything. Well, anything except for James Bond movies. As he struggled to keep the overloaded bike steady, he wondered if James Bond ever had to spend his summer doing stupid delivery jobs. Probably not. The world's greatest secret agent probably had really cool jobs as a kid, like loading ammo into machine guns mounted under the hood of an MI6 agent's Italian sports car, or installing the lasers on spy satellites, or maybe... "Shaun!" From the other side of the parking lot, his friend Toby was waving his hands like an idiot, in clear view of Mr. Hooper. Shaun gestured for him to stop, but it did little good. Toby kept shouting as if Shaun couldn't hear him. Glancing back to see if Mr. Hooper was watching, he was relieved to see that the big man was already stepping back inside, his black and yellow apron flapping like a superhero's cape, on backwards. Shaun rode over to Toby. "Dude, I told you to keep out of sight. If Mr. Hooper finds out you're helping me with my deliveries, he'll fire me. He already thinks I'm too young."
"Sorry, bro. No caddying today at the golf course, so I thought I'd just head over. Besides, I spied the coolest update on the GameWire forum, and I'm way too excited."
"About?"
"They just announced the release date for Chopping Mall 5 Black Friday."
"We haven't even played version 4 yet."
"We're falling behind, bro."
Living in a small town like Honeywell Springs, Shaun always felt they were falling behind. The local theater played movies that had been out everywhere else for months. The arcade games at the bowling alley were from the 1990s, and the surrounding hills made cell phone reception hit or miss. It was like living on an island. A tiny, dull, black and yellow, bee-infested island. But having a friend like Toby somehow made it bearable. Shaun and Toby had been best buds since kindergarten. Their friendship was built on a solid foundation of video games, junk food, and a fascination with James Bond. They'd watched each 007 flick at least 10 times, and the movies had inspired them to make a pact. When they were old enough, they'd leave Honeywell Springs, enroll in spy school, and become international secret agents. They would spend their lives going on dangerous missions, taking down global villains, and saving the world. But that was a long way off, and before they could do any of that, they'd have to get this delivery to Dr. Romero's house.
"Man, this is a lot of groceries,"
Toby said as Shaun transferred some of the bags to a basket designed to hold a set of golf clubs.
"I think you should split the tip with me."
"Fine. How about we split it 20-80?
Toby considered for a moment. 40-60, you fat cheapskate.
30-70, you mooch.
Nah, Toby said. Final offer. 60-70.
What, dude? That doesn't even... Shaun shook his head. Oh, forget it. I'll give you half. I hate doing math in the summer. Toby transferred another bag, and Shaun took in Toby's black and yellow striped sweater. It fit loosely under his thin face and jet black hair. The stripes swirled around at an angle, making Toby's top half look like a bizarre barber's pole. His bottom half was equally strange, but not out of the ordinary. Toby had gone from Wii golf to real golf 3 years ago, and what came with the new hobby was a collection of the ugliest pants ever created. Golf pants, which he even wore to school. The kids teased him, but Toby never seemed to care. Today's golf trousers were turquoise, held up by a bone-white leather belt that looked like it should be on somebody's grandfather, not on a 13-year-old boy. Aren't you dying in that sweater? Shaun handed Toby another bag. It's like 100 degrees.
I know. Toby picked the sweater off his chest, fanning the air underneath. My grandma made it, and if I don't wear this for Founder's Day, my mom is going to make me put on the matching bee costume she got for the whole family this year.
Matching?
The whole family, dude. Antennas, big old stinger hanging off the butt.
That's harsh, man,
Shaun said. Tell me about it. So where are we going?
Dr. Romero's house.
Toby's face lit up like a Christmas tree. Sweet! I've always wanted to go out there.
Why?
Shaun asked. Toby grabbed another bag. You always make it sound so cool.
Not on purpose,
Shaun said.
The boys jumped on their seats and pushed off.
Hey, you can't go that way, Toby said.
Why not?
Toby pulled alongside of him. You know, Founder's Day. All of downtown is closed to traffic. They won't even let bikes through this year.
Seriously?
No worries, bro, Toby said. Follow me. We'll cut across the golf course.
Shaun followed, wondering how they would make it over the fairways without getting plugged by a golf ball. He was going to ask, but by the time he reached his friend, Toby was going on about the festival.
I scoped it out this morning. This year is going to be the sickest celebration ever. They brought in a carnival, Ferris wheel, carousel, dunk tank, carny games, and everyone is in costume. Even the creepy carnies I saw had black and yellow on. Mayor Savini wants everyone to go all out for the VIPs this year. My dad said honey buyers are coming in from Stein Mart, Kmart, Walmart, S-Mart, and a whole bunch of other marts. Toby glanced over at Shaun, clearly trying to gauge his interest. Shaun tried to show some by nodding politely. And all the sheriff's deputies, Toby continued, are wearing these seriously heinous black and yellow uniforms and a vest with a hoodie that has antennas. My mom and the ladies' auxiliary worked on them all month. I can't wait to see Sheriff Roscoe in his. I'm going to laugh my... Toby looked over at Shaun. Are you even listening?
Yes.
Shaun flashed a half-hearted smile.
Sounds epic.
So come to the festival this year, man. Shaun shook his head and pedaled faster, hoping to avoid his friend's gaze. Hey, what happened to you sucked, but it was years ago, Toby said. Eventually you got to get over this thing with bees, man. I mean, you live in Honeywell Springs of all places, the honeybee capital of the world.
I know where I live, fartface.
Just think of how awesome it would be, making fun of all the grown-up tools in their bee get-ups. They'll all be in costume this year, absolutely everyone. And it's tradition, man.
Dude, I've lived here my whole life. I'm aware of our ginormously lame 100-year-old tradition.
The Founder's Day holiday, celebrating the tiny creatures that made the town possible, had been Shaun's least favorite day since his nightmares began. Honeywell Springs had dozens of honey farms, 3 honey packaging factories, almost 100 agricultural hive growers, and several companies that created products from honey and beeswax, such as medicines and ointments, most of which were invented by Dr. Romero. It was absolutely the worst place on the planet to live if you suffered from apiphobia, the fear of bees. Can you drop it? Shaun snapped. You're starting to sound like my mom.
Fine, butt nugget, Toby said. But you need to get over...
Hey, we're here,
Shaun interrupted loudly, never so happy to see the entrance to the Honeywell Springs golf course just ahead.
So what's the plan?
We cut across the course, Toby said. We head out to the back nine, then straight out of town. The doctor's place is only a mile or two from the course.
But how do we ride our bikes on the course without getting chased off or beamed with a line drive?
Dude, Toby said, it's Founders Day, the one day of the year the course is closed. We have the whole place to ourselves, man. Shaun couldn't help but smile.
Genius, Toby. I knew there was a reason I liked you.
There are lots of reasons why you like me.
Not really.
You like my sense of humor.
Nope, you're not funny.
My conversation?
I could live without it.
My gaming skills are legendary.
Yeah, legendarily weak.
So's your face, Toby said. Shaun chuckled.
What does that even mean?
Toby rattled off more of his likable attributes as they rounded the clubhouse, zipped through the golf cart area, and headed straight for the back nine. They were cutting across the 17th green when Shaun heard something. It was distant, but seemed to be getting closer. A high-pitched buzzing or whine. Shaun's heart quickened, and his lungs tightened. Hitting the brakes, he stopped in the middle of the fairway, in the shadow of a grass-covered cliff overlooking a sand trap. Toby stopped beside him.
I always share my Twix bar with you.
Shut up a minute, Shaun said. You hear it?
What?
That buzzing.
It's Honeywell Springs. There's always buzzing.
But
Something big zipped over the crest of the hill. A dark, ball-shaped mass rose into the sky with a thundering buzz, momentarily blocking the sun. It hung there for a beat, then arced downward. Shaun realized that whatever it was coming down fast, right on top of them. They needed to move, but Shaun was frozen, paralyzed in the shadow engulfing him. Toby scrambled away, but Shaun remained rooted to the spot. All he could do was raise his arms and brace for impact. Chapter 2. Thunderball. Buzzing like a chainsaw, the dark mass that dropped out of the sky clipped Shaun's handlebars with a forceful metallic thud. Whatever it was crashed to the ground nearby, as Shaun fell back into the grass, his bike and bags of groceries falling on top of him. Flat on his back, Shaun could see nothing but sky. Feeling the debris of groceries all around, he was suddenly grateful that golf isn't played on concrete, because if it were, his head would be split open. He sat up slowly.
What are you idiots doing out here?
A voice yelled. Toby had managed to avoid the collision. He stood a few feet away, still on his bike. What are you doing here, riding that thing? Toby fired back at someone Shaun couldn't see. This is a PGA championship-ranked golf course, man! Shaun was about to stand up when something landed on his hand. It's just a fly, he thought. Please, please, be a fly. Shaun peered down. His heart began to pound, and his lungs seized up. Not a fly. The bee crawled over Shaun's knuckles, then stopped, its feelers probing a vein on the top of his hand. Shaun needed to gasp for air, but his chest was locked. He stayed completely still, sweat trickling down his temple. The insect's abdomen twitched, and its stinger emerged from the back, as piercing as a sewing needle. Something slapped the top of Shaun's hand, hard. He recoiled, his hand stinging, but not stung. He reached into his pocket and retrieved his inhaler. After a double shot, his lungs relaxed. Toby knelt down next to him. You okay? Shaun took a breath and nodded. Someone wearing a helmet loomed over them.
Geez, what's his damage?
He has a thing about bees, Toby said.
Seriously?
A snort came from inside the helmet.
Man, does he live in the wrong town.
A round of laughter bubbled over the top of the hill. A half-dozen kids, all wearing black and yellow shirts, sat on BMX bikes. Shaun gazed up at the figure standing over him. The sun was behind the helmet, and Shaun couldn't see the face, but whoever it was wore a black No Fear t-shirt and dark shorts with the Monster Energy drink logo on the sides. When the person pulled off the motorcycle helmet, crimson curls fell out, and Shaun recognized who it was. Sam Campbell cradled the helmet on a hip and smirked.
What a dweeb.
Shaun felt a spark of anger as the kids laughed again. Sam wasn't the biggest bully in school, but definitely an up-and-comer. In 3rd grade, Sam dumped dirt down Shaun's shirt every day for a week, until Shaun finally worked up the nerve to tell a teacher. When Toby took up golf, Sam was always there to tease him about his choice of pants. Shaun had wanted to punch Sam at least a dozen times in the last few years, but he never did. For one, Shaun had never hit anyone in his life, and if he tried, he'd probably do more damage to himself than who he was hitting. Second, the name Sam was short for Samantha, and no matter how much he thought she deserved it, Shaun would never hit a girl. Toby found the bee and picked it up by one of its misshapen wings.
You killed it.
So?
Sam said with a shrug.
Don't you know it's illegal to kill a bee in Honeywell Springs?
Shaun said. He didn't really care that the bee was dead. He just didn't like being laughed at.
You have a strange way of saying thank you, dork.
Sam looked like she didn't give two snot rockets about laws, rules, or riding her mini motorcycle on a championship-rated golf course.
Losers.
She rolled her eyes and turned to her small motorbike.
Hey, Sam!
Called one of the kids on the hill.
It's getting late. The festival's gonna start.
Sam knelt next to her bike. The word Thunderball was emblazoned across the gas tank.
You guys go ahead. I'll catch up.
You sure?
A kid yelled. Sam waved a hand over her shoulder.
Later, dudes.
The kids zipped down the hill as Toby helped Shaun to his feet. Shaun assessed the damaged groceries. Sam righted her bike.
Aw, man! The forks are bent.
She let the bike fall to the ground and turned back to Toby and Shaun.
What the heck are you guys doing out here, anyway?
Shaun picked up a bag that was leaking something and held it out to her.
I'm working. What are you doing, flying through the air on that death machine?
Sam pointed back up the hill.
I was trying to clear that monster sand trap. The one day of the year I could have totally crushed it, and you two dweebs have to be in the way.
Sorry we got in the way of you trying to kill yourself,
Shaun said, looking into the leaking bag.
But you now owe me a jar of dill pickles and...
Shaun tilted the bag so he could read the label of the other broken jar.
A jar of whatever the heck gefilte fish is.
Well, you owe me a new mini motorcycle,
Sam snapped.
Why don't we just call it even?
Even?
Shaun repeated.
You're not supposed to be out here.
And you are?
She's got you there, man,
Toby said. Shaun glared at Toby.
Not helping, dude.
Look, dweebs,
Sam said, picking up her bike.
I could care less about your pickles and your weird fish.
She rolled her bent bike over to them.
As far as the trespassing thing goes, you didn't see me, and I didn't see you. Just like at school.
Sam held up a fist, looking very much like she knew how to use it.
Got it.
Shaun and Toby stared at her knuckles, white and threatening.
You have to admit,
Toby said,
she makes a real good argument. Whose side are you on?
Shaun asked.
The side that doesn't get us beat up.
Fine, Shaun said, and looked at Sam.
Neither of us were ever here.
Whatever.
Sam lowered her fist and moved away.
Hasta la vista, dweebs.
Shaun and Toby watched as Sam pushed her bike down the fairway toward the clubhouse. When she was out of earshot, Toby said,
Do you think Sam is kind of, cute?
Shaun stared at Toby.
Did she run over your head? Come on, Toby said. Take away the anger, the meanness, the black clothes, and you don't think she's a little cute?
I guess, Shaun sighed.
In the way baby Godzilla is cute. Now can we stop screwing around? We're late. Okay, Grouchy McGroucherson.
Toby helped Shaun repack his bike, and a few minutes later they were back on course. They continued cutting across the greens, then rode out onto Old Nectar Road. It was mostly dirt, very bumpy, but it was the only way out to Dr. Romero's house. A half-mile after they left the golf course, the road went through what Shaun thought was the creepiest part of the ride, a thicket of trees that rose up high and dense. The branches were so long and lush that they reached across the road, blocking most of the sky. It was like a natural tunnel, with walls of tree bark and a rustling ceiling of leaves. Toby kept talking about Sam as they entered.
You don't think we had a little moment back there, Sam and I?
What are you talking about?
Shaun said, noticing the temperature drop as the warm sunlight disappeared.
You hardly talked to her.
No, it was more an unspoken thing,
Toby said.
It was just a look between us.
The only thing I saw between you and Sam was her fist, which she was about to beat us.
Shaun suddenly quit talking as a rumbling permeated the trees. Toby was listening too. His eyes were wide and cast upward. They stopped in the middle of the tree-formed tunnel as the sound grew.
What is it?
Toby said. Shaun shook his head.
It's getting louder.
Sounds like bees, but different.
They scanned for beehives in the branches above. The buzzing became a roar.
It's not in the trees,
Shaun said, his pulse racing.
It's above.
Slivers of blue sky, visible through gaps in the leafy ceiling, flickered as dark forms streaked overhead. Shaun pulled out his inhaler, but before he could use it, the roar from above began to fade. Whatever it was had moved off. Shaun and Toby remained still and quiet until the lingering echo of the monstrous buzz was completely gone. When the only sound left was the breeze rustling the leaves, Toby looked at Shaun.
An airplane, maybe? Crop duster?
Shaun pictured the dozens of flying, murky shapes he'd glimpsed.
I don't think so.
What then?
I don't know, and I don't want to know, Shaun said. I just want to drop this load off and get back before...
He looked at his watch. It was already 4 o'clock. He imagined Mr. Hooper standing at the back door of the store, fists on hips, waiting.
Before I get fired. Come on.
They pedaled fast, clearing the tree tunnel in less than a minute. Shaun and Toby huffed and puffed over the next ride. When they reached the crest, they could just see the roof of Dr. Romero's house between the treetops. Shaun hoped the doctor wasn't in the mood to give them a tour, because if he didn't get back and do at least 2 more deliveries, this day would be a total loss. During Shaun's last tour of Dr. Romero's laboratory, the doctor showed Shaun his latest experiment, something to do with women's makeup, a skin cream made from bee venom that could generate human cells. Or was it regenerate dead cells? Shaun couldn't remember because he was too distracted by the horrific mutations the doctor had created. They scurried about in glass aquariums all around the lab. The glowing honeybee that had been genetically mixed with a firefly was interesting, but the African killer bee that the doctor combined with an arachnid was the stuff of nightmares. Dr. Romero called the oversized, creepy, half-bee, half-spider a bumblebeater, and the thought of it getting loose kept Shaun up at night. Whatever unsettling thing the doctor insisted on showing Shaun, at least he wouldn't have to bear it alone. Besides, Toby loved horror movies and would probably think the flying, 8-legged black and yellow terror was cool.
Is that the house?
Toby pointed at the 2-story dark wood home.
Dead ahead, Shaun said.
It looks like the house in Psycho, man. So cool.
What, Co?
Psycho.
Horror movie?
Shaun asked. Toby nodded.
Total classic, dude.
Shaun didn't care for horror movies. He liked horror in video games where you could try to control the outcome. With movies, it felt like he was just along for the terrifying ride, and that lack of control sometimes triggered his asthma. As their tires rolled onto Dr. Romero's property, Shaun immediately felt that something was wrong. He'd never seen a car on the driveway. Wasn't sure if the doctor even had one. Now there was not just one, but 2 vehicles parked outside. Shaun and Toby stopped their bikes near the car by the rickety porch. It was a Honeywell County Sheriff's vehicle, and the driver's side door was open. Shaun peered inside. The interior light was on, but the car was empty. The shotgun rack on the dashboard was also empty. Toby moved toward the other vehicle. "What kind of truck is this?" He peered in the back through its open rear doors. "It says animal control on the side." "Does Dr. Romero have a pest problem?" Toby asked. The image of Dr. Romero's creature he called a bumble-beater popped into Shaun's thoughts. Maybe it got loose. Reaching back, he grabbed 2 of the heavy bags from the rear basket. "Come on, let's drop this stuff and get out of here." Toby followed him up the wooden steps. They stood shoulder to shoulder at the big door. Shaun shifted the bags to one hand so he could knock. When his knuckles hit the door, it swung inward, hinges creaking like a rusty mausoleum door unopened for centuries. Toby and Shaun looked at one another, then back into the big silent house. Shaun knocked on the doorframe. "Hello? Dr. Romero? It's Shaun. I've got your groceries." No answer. "Maybe he's upstairs," Toby said. "Well, why don't you go and see?" Toby motioned his hand inside. "After you." "No, that's okay," Shaun said. "You go first." Toby shook his head, repeating his hand gesture. "Not at all. Age before beauty." "Dude, you're 2 months older than me." "I didn't say what age," Toby said. Shaun sighed. "Come on." He stepped inside, with Toby on his heels. Their shoes made no sound on the soft Persian rug that covered the entryway. Shaun was about to call for the doctor again, when something on the floor stopped him. Shaun pointed at the shotgun lying on the rug. "Is that blood on the barrel?" Toby mumbled. "Okay," Shaun said. "New plan." "I'm listening." "Something has obviously happened here. Maybe a break-in. So let's drop the groceries, back on out, and go find Sheriff Roscoe." Dude," Toby said, his voice trembling. "I found him." Shaun spun around. Toby was staring into the drawing room. "But I don't think he's going to be much help," Toby said. Shaun stepped past Toby and peered into the still room. Lying on the floor, with blood staining his special black and yellow Founder's Day uniform, lay the motionless, portly body of Sheriff Roscoe. Chapter 3. Death is Forever. Shaun was close to hyperventilating. He pulled out his inhaler and took a squirt. In a few moments, he began to breathe normally, or as close to normal as he could get while staring at a dead body. "Can I have a hit of that?" Toby asked. Shaun handed it over, and Toby shot a quick pump into his lungs. "Thanks, man," Toby said, then handed it back. "Any time," Shaun mumbled, his eyes locked on the dead body just a few feet away. "Now what?" Toby snapped his fingers, then reached into his pocket. "Call for help." Toby pulled out his cell phone. "No reception out here," Shaun said. Toby smacked his phone. "World's biggest network, my butt." "Landline," Shaun said, eyeing a phone resting on a table in the hallway. Toby snatched up the receiver and dialed. He flashed a look of disappointment. "Does the doc pay his bills?" "Why?" Toby put the receiver back in the cradle. "'Cause the phone is dead." "We could try the CB." Shaun pointed at the mic resting on the dead man's shoulder. "Excellent," Toby said. "You go make the call. I'll cover you from here." Shaun stared at him. "Cover me with what?" "Ah," Toby smiled. "Warm, happy thoughts." Shaun wrapped an arm around Toby's back and pushed him in the room. "Fine," Toby said, stumbling forward. They both knelt on opposite sides of the body, and Toby whispered, "How do we know he's dead?" Shaun looked at the sheriff's round face. The last time he'd seen it, the sheriff was scolding him for riding his bike on the sidewalk. As he checked the big man over, Shaun had no doubt that the sheriff's scolding days were over. "Well," Shaun whispered, "he's not breathing. He looks pale.
And his eyes are open and glassy. How much deader do you want him to be?
Toby shrugged, then whispered,
That's dead enough, I guess. Why are we whispering? Shaun asked. I don't know, Toby said. Just seemed like the thing to do. You know, like when you're in a church or in a museum. Or when you find a dead body in a mad scientist's house. Exactly. Can we stop now?
Yeah, Toby said, pointing to the CB.
You know how to work that thing? Why me?
Shaun asked.
It was your idea.
Shaun slumped, then held up a fist.
Shoot for it?
Toby sighed, nodded, and held out his fist.
Okay.
The boys said in unison,
Rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock, shoot,
while pumping their fists. Creating a thick V with his fingers, Toby threw a Spock. Shaun shaped his hand to look like a reptile's mouth.
Lizard beats Spock, dude.
I know. Toby reached for the CB.
Vulcans are supposed to be super intelligent. You'd think they could outsmart a stupid lizard.
His hand hovered over the CB, clearly trying to figure out how to unhook it without touching blood. With a deep breath, Toby snatched it up, then checked it over for crimson splashes. Satisfied, he brought it to his lips and pressed the call button.
Hello?
He began.
Mayday, SOS, hello?
Shaun smacked his lips.
Dude, we're not shipwrecked.
Toby lowered the CB.
Well, excuse me, it's my first time finding a dead body.
Shaun's heart skipped a beat as he glimpsed a flesh-colored lump on the other side of the room.
Correction, 2 dead bodies.
Toby followed Shaun's gaze to where a woman lay sprawled across the couch like someone's dirty laundry. Her limbs dangled above the carpet, and blood dripped into her blonde hair, from which spouted black and yellow bee antennas. Toby shot to his feet.
Okay, I'm out of here. 2 dead bodies in one room is my limit. Right there with you, man,
Shaun said, and started moving toward the door. But before either of them could get out of the room, a horrific buzzing filled the entryway. They both stopped and stared at the open front door, neither of them moving as the buzzing got louder. Shaun's lungs tightened, and as he reached for his inhaler, a monstrous bee the size of a chihuahua flew in through the open door. It hovered in the entryway, turning, scanning. 4 wings, each larger than playing cards, flapped in a blur of motion, keeping the 6-legged creature aloft. Its long, sleek abdomen comprised more than half its body length, making it look more wasp-like than bee. But as its apple-sized head swiveled to look at them with black compound eyes, and wiry hair stood up along its thorax, Shaun could see it was definitely a bee. Shaun's lungs contracted, but before the chest pain started, he felt Toby's hand on his shirt. His friend yanked him to the floor as the bee attacked. The giant insect zipped overhead, stinger out and ready for business. Speed and momentum carried the bee through an open window. Then the creature stopped, turned around, and charged again. Shaun rolled one way and Toby the other. Shaun scurried over Sheriff Roscoe's body and then pushed himself up by a plush reading chair. The hideous bee changed directions and went after Toby. Toby screamed. Shaun felt helpless as Toby raised his hands to fend off the dagger-like stinger. Without thinking, Shaun snatched a pillow from the chair and chucked it like a Chinese throwing star. The pillow, twice the size of the bee, hit the insect dead on. The pillow crashed into a table lamp, then hit the wall. When it came to rest on the floor, Shaun saw a stinger pierce the corduroy fabric in the pillow. Toby jumped up and dashed over to him.
Nice shot, dude. Very James Bond.
Shaun pulled out his inhaler and took a hit. On an average day, Shaun took a shot once or maybe twice a day. At this pace, his inhaler would be bone dry within the hour. The pillow rolled over with a soft thump, and the bee frantically tried to extract its stinger. It came off with a puff of feathers, and the bee fumbled across the floor.
Hey, Toby said. It's not dying. It still has its stinger. What? Shaun said, trying to breathe. Normally, bees can only sting once. Then they die.
The bee rose off the floor, buzzing angrily.
Newsflash, Shaun said. That bee isn't normal.
The insect turned its grotesque face toward Shaun and Toby, and its buzzing became a roar that Shaun could feel in his chest.
Wow, he's really mad, Toby said.
The flying beast charged them again. Shaun and Toby took off running. They sprinted through open rooms, bumping into each other as they took turns to glance back. Every time Shaun looked over his shoulder, the buzzing got closer. It sounded as if the thing was close enough to land on his head, but just before it did, Toby screamed, "Duck!" Turning forward, Shaun saw something white and stringy spanning the entryway to the kitchen. Toby slipped under it like a runner sliding home, and Shaun skidded down right behind him. They tumbled into the kitchen, slamming into counters and chairs. Shaun jumped up immediately, expecting to fight for his life. He brought up his fists and found the thing, struggling, squirming, stuck in the enormous spider web spun across the kitchen entryway. The boys had slid under it, but the giant bee hadn't been so lucky. Its wings were held tight by thick strands of silk, and it seemed to become more entangled as it fought to break free. Something buzzed over Shaun's head, and he instinctively ducked. Toby got to his feet, and the two boys stood mesmerized, watching Dr. Romero's 8-legged bumble beater fly to its web and land next to the monster bee. The bumble beater seized the giant insect around the head in its horrific tarantula-like mandibles. The bee tried to sting its attacker, but the bumble beater moved out of the way and thrust black, paralyzing fangs deep into the bee's thorax. The bee convulsed, then slumped. Immediately, the bumble beater began spinning its prize into a preserving cocoon of silk.
Dude, Toby said, panting, that could possibly be the sickest thing I've ever seen. Sick like cool or sick like super gross?
Toby shook his head.
I haven't decided yet.
Shaun put a hand on his chest. His heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his temples.
Do you know what a stroke feels like?
Before Toby answered, something burst from the pantry. Shaun spun around, and the first thing he saw was the meat cleaver, its stainless steel blade glinting in the kitchen light. Shaun and Toby screamed in unison as the cleaver loomed overhead. The man holding it stopped in the middle of the kitchen and joined their panicked screams. The three stood motionless, all staring at one another, screaming. Suddenly, the man with the cleaver winced in pain, clutched at his bloody shoulder, then fell to his knees. He fell forward with a loud plop, and the cleaver skidded across the linoleum. Toby leaned against a counter, hand over his heart, and met Shaun's gaze.
Dude, I don't care how much you offer to pay me. I am not going on any more of your deliveries.
Scientifically, it is inevitable.
Reports of riots and chaos downtown.
Mathematically, it is logical.
This is not a hoax. There are reports of some sort of outbreak.
It is a terrifying, yet unavoidable reality.
The origin of this crisis, the Botany Bay Convention Center. God help anyone alive down there.
But for some, reality has never been an issue.
Dude, your costume sucks.
Like a tablecloth. They're like,
Hey, what are you doing? Get out!
This is ideological!
This is a good day to die.
He does know he's not a real Klingon, right?
Get out! Get off! I want to live!
Baseball!
simulate this.
The needs of the many outweigh the good of the few.
We're doomed! Trapped! It's hopeless!
Are you saying this is a no-win scenario?
Exactly! Oh! Live long and prosper.
Fixed it! They're right behind me, aren't they? I'm not surprised! Are you surprised? I'm not surprised! Oh yeah! A red shirt eyes! Big effing surprise!